There is a country in Central America where people of all races live together in peace. A land of stunning natural beauty, endowed with the perfect tropical climate. Home to an amazing variety of life forms, some of which are not to be found anywhere else. A land of volcanoes and lush tropical forests, of long, curving beaches and sprawling swamps, of steep, craggy mountains and dry, bushy plains. A country whose friendly, easygoing people describe a joyful, happy time with a phrase of simple beauty. Pura vida, pure life. Costa Rica lies astride the Central American Isthmus with the Caribbean Sea to the east, the Pacific Ocean to the west, Nicaragua to the north, and Panama to the south. It is a small country, in fact, slightly smaller than the state of West Virginia. However, Costa Rica contains enough geographical diversity for a continent. Among other features, no less than 4 mountain ranges. Costa Rica was discovered by Christopher Columbus on his 4th and last voyage to the New World. On the 18th of September, 1502, exactly 10 years after his first journey, Columbus anchored off an unknown coast to repair storm-damaged ships and pick up fresh provisions. When the Spaniards stepped onto the strange shore, they were met by natives wearing gold. Gold. The underfed, underpaid men from the Spanish ships must have been convinced this was El Dorado, the legendary land of gold, tales of which they had heard about on their previous journeys. Dazzled by dreams of riches, as well as by the breathtaking natural beauty of the land they discovered, they named it Rich Coast, Costa Rica. The conquest that followed was remarkably easy. The Indians that inhabited the area weren't organized into a nation-state like the Incas or the Aztecs. And before long, the Spaniards found that a string of cheap glass beads could be as mighty as the sword. However, the trickle of gold artifacts never turned into the hoped-for flood. The small tribes inhabiting the land hadn't amassed much wealth. And with the discovery of the immense Inca, Maya, and Aztec treasures in Peru and Mexico, Costa Rica lost much of its significance for the Spanish crown. It became a quiet colonial backwater. So quiet, in fact, that when Spain granted it independence in 1821, the news took 2 months to arrive. As time went on, the settlers discovered that life in the new colony was far from being a bed of roses. There was no large population to exploit, and so, at one time, even the colony's governor had to cultivate his own plot of land to survive. The colonists used to call themselves Little Brothers, Hermaniticos. Today, Costa Ricans call themselves Ticos, and do so with an unmistakable sense of pride. For they have created a society that allows everyone to enjoy life to its utmost, regardless of race, age, or sex. Right in the middle of the country, in between 2 mountain ranges studded with volcanoes, lies the heart of Costa Rica, the Meseta Central, or Central Valley. Over 60% of Costa Rica's 3 million people live here, and it is here that the Spanish colonists settled, escaping both the coast's hot, humid climate and the British pirates who regularly raided Costa Rican shores. burning and stealing whatever the poor settlers had. Cartago, Heredia, Ujaras. The names of towns evoke their founders' origins. In fact, the Central Valley's climate is similar to that of the highlands of Spanish Castile. The land's elevation, over 1,200 feet above sea level, and the clouds that spread over the valley from the surrounding peaks are a cooling influence, resulting in an annual medium temperature of 70 degrees Fahrenheit. The biggest town in the Central Valley, and indeed in all of Costa Rica, is the nation's capital, San Jose, a bustling metropolis of over 1 million inhabitants. It is a melting pot for all the cultural influences that give the country its unique character. There is a saying that all roads lead to Rome. In San Jose, all the streets seem to lead here, to the Plaza de la Cultura, or Culture Square. Located right in the center of the city, with almost all of its major landmarks a short walk away, it is the site of civic functions and ceremonies. On other, less official days, its atmosphere brings to mind the fairs of medieval Europe. The square is sprinkled with stands on which artisans and painters proudly exhibit their work. Hundreds of people crowd to see itinerant magicians and jugglers, and to hear musicians play the faintly melancholic tunes that characterize Latin American music. This band has traveled all the way from Ecuador to perform before an admiring audience. Ticos love art and regard themselves as a nation of artists. To quote one of Costa Rica's presidents, "We need to concern ourselves not only with the standard of living, but the quality of life as well. Why have tractors without violins?" As the story behind San Jose's National Theater building indicates, Costa Rican love of the arts is part of the country's history. In 1890, a world-renowned prima donna came to Central America with a traveling opera company, but refused to perform in Costa Rica because of the lack of an appropriate stage. The newly rich coffee growers immediately decided to finance the construction of a world-class theater with a special export tax on every bag of coffee. Belgian architects were called in to design the building. Not surprisingly, the theater's steel structure was ordered from Belgian mills. The marble came from Italy, along with Italian painters and decorators, as evidenced by this fresco showing scenes from everyday Tico life. A full bunch of bananas can easily weigh over 100 pounds. And yet, this gentleman holds it as if it were nothing more than a slightly oversized bouquet of flowers. The Costa Rican Teatro Nacional opened in 1894 with Gounod's Faust. The opening night included singers from the Paris Opera. The vanity of the coffee growers was appeased in a way that benefited the whole nation. In 1965, thousands of fine performances later, the theater was declared a national monument. Its program includes drama and opera classics, as well as concerts and dance reviews, such as this Fantasia Folclórica by Teatro Mélico Salazar. Family life revolves around children, and it is very rare to see a baby crying, even though, at first glance, there are more babies in Costa Rica than anywhere else. For this is a country whose social structure is based on the family unit, and where Mother's Day is one of the biggest national holidays. Given these facts, it is not surprising that most Costa Ricans marry young, and in contrast to many other societies, stay married for a lifetime. The children of Costa Rica are truly lucky. Born on a continent that was brutally conquered by foreign invaders, they live in peace, members of a society that, in many ways, is more advanced than others. For example, the national policy of universal free education has resulted in one of the highest literacy rates in the world, 93%. Those seeking clues to the Costa Rican national identity can find them here, at the National Museum in San Jose, together with yet another Costa Rican riddle. These huge basalt balls were found in the Guanacaste province. Dated hundreds of years before Columbus, they remain a modern-day mystery. Who made them? How? And for what purpose? Will someone one day find the right answer? Or has it been buried forever? A secret taken to the grave by the high priest of an extinct tribe? Whatever the secrets of its pre-Columbian past, Costa Rica is moving into the future with a confident step. In 1948, its government did something that seems outrageous given the troubled Latin American political scene. It abolished the army. However, no armies invaded from neighboring countries. In 1987, bells rang across the country when President Oscar Arias received the Nobel Peace Prize for his authorship of a plan for lasting peace in Central America, an initiative that helped bring about an end to the civil war in neighboring Nicaragua. A victory not only for America, but for the entire world. Nowadays, the only uniformed men one can see in the streets of San Jose are policemen, whose horses seem to feel at home both on traffic-jammed streets and the quiet lanes of La Sabana Park, the former international airport that the Ticos, true to form, have converted into a public park. The former air terminal now houses the Museum of Costa Rican Art. It features exhibits deeply evocative of the country's past, as well as special exhibitions by artists of such caliber as Joan Miró. Outside, in the park grounds, the spirit is more physical, but still focused on self-development. La Sabana Park is a meeting ground for many people. Well-to-do businessmen getting some well-needed exercise. And boys busy playing the national sport, soccer. Soccer is to Costa Ricans what baseball is to Americans. And even the tiniest village has its own soccer team. Almost every boy knows how to play soccer, and play it well. So much that it is said a tico knows how to kick a ball before he learns to walk. To perfect one's skills well enough to play in a team, wearing a real uniform is a dream shared by all young Costa Ricans, regardless of sex. Many local teams have women playing alongside men, although the professional teams are exclusively male. A park converted from an airport, a museum of art in the former air terminal. The location of San Jose's Museum of Gold is almost as exotic. Famous for its second largest collection of gold in the world, the museum is housed underground, directly below the Plaza de la Cultura. Here, in vaults and chambers guarded by armed policemen, lie fabulous gold treasures the Spaniards hadn't managed to trade or steal. The splendid collection weighs over 1,400 pounds, which makes it the second largest in the world. The exhibits have the same hypnotic effect today as they must have had 5 centuries earlier. Treasures whose unique workmanship is truly worth as much as their weight in gold. A short walk away from the silent underground chambers of the Gold Museum is an open-air venue of an entirely different character, the Mercado Central, Central Market. Here, fresh produce is brought in every morning from the fertile fields of the Central Valley. Some of the sellers clearly believe there is no sell like the good old hard sell. The buyers are discriminating. The market merchants, most of whom come from the farmlands around San Jose, have to compete for customers with hundreds of little privately owned stores, whose proprietors seem to be doing quite well. In this way, San Jose is no different from any other big city. It is the wheels of commerce that make progress possible. Much of the produce sold in San Jose winds up in little restaurants, or sodas, that can be found on virtually every street. There, a solid meal can be had for much less than a cosmopolitan traveler might be used to paying. Costa Rican food shares a common denominator with other Central American cuisine. Black beans with rice, gallo pinto, are a staple. Eaten on their own for breakfast, they often act as a side dish to such succulent treats as this, broiled tenderloin. Other classic dishes include black bean soup with eggs, meat soups of all kinds, fish both raw and cooked as this fried snapper, and a special tropical delicacy, hearts of palm. Another immensely popular dish is the ubiquitous tamale, prepared at this restaurant by adding spices and ground pork meat to cornmeal dough, then wrapping the mixture in a banana leaf for steaming. Of course, no meal, whether Caribbean or Hispanic in origin, is complete without postres, or desserts. And no dessert is complete without a cup of what can be called the national beverage, coffee. As night falls, the little sodas empty of customers, while luxurious restaurants, nightclubs, and bars rapidly fill up. Many San Jose revelers head straight for El Pueblo, a maze of Spanish colonial-style alleyways and tiled roofs where a visitor may wander for hours. After all, this is a country where the afternoon siesta is part of the way of life, and a midday nap is the ideal prelude to a night spent out on the town, meeting old friends, making new ones, and dancing. While reggae and disco music are as popular as anywhere else, nothing gets a crowd onto its feet as quickly as a fiery Latino piece, such as this calypso. Costa Ricans love a good time, and the party often goes on well into the small hours, sagging energies being quickly boosted by a little liquid refreshment. Favorite drinks include rum, drunk straight or in cocktails, and beer with popular local brews carrying such grand-sounding names like Imperial or Bavaria. In addition to their language, Spanish settlers brought something more influential, the Catholic religion. The new faith caught and spread like wildfire, fanned by zealous missionaries. This was a time when a priest could wield as much power as an emperor, an era during which a man wearing a Jesuit's habit could command as much respect and power as a prince. Earthly life was something transient, a brief prelude to the eternity awaiting the soul after the body's death. The native religions were based on a similar supposition, and the missionaries' teachings found willing ears. In the town of Cartago, the old colonial capital of Costa Rica, the faith is as strong as ever. Next to the ruins of a cathedral that was never completed due to recurrent earthquakes, stands the most famous shrine of worship in the entire country, the Basílica de Nuestra Señora de los Ángeles, built in honor of the Black Virgin, La Negrita, Costa Rica's patron saint. It is the destination of pilgrimages not only from within Costa Rica, but also from other Central American countries, such as Panama or Nicaragua. Behind the Basilica, at the site of La Negrita's miraculous appearance to a peasant girl in 1635, flows a holy spring. Its waters are believed to have a healing effect. The faithful line up to fill bottles and jars. Although Cartago had been Costa Rica's capital for 300 years, not many of the old buildings have survived. The culprit is the nearby Irasu volcano, which erupted as recently as 1965. The view from the top is often non-existent. At 11,000 feet, it is almost always shrouded by thick clouds. After the lush vegetation of the Central Valley, the summit seems like another world. Here and there, the forbidding terrain is dotted by plants that ingeniously adapt to the inhospitable ground. This plant gathers water directly from air with the help of its fleshy, hairy leaves. A volcano mountain can grow up to 3 miles high and is like an inverted funnel for the boiling magma, the molten rock deep inside the earth. When the pressure grows, the liquefied stone works its way up to the top of the funnel, releasing heavily sulfuric gases and showers of ash in an ominous warning. Volcano explosions often coincide with earthquakes, as shifting tectonic plates are often the cause behind the sudden pressure buildup. The results can be seen in these historic photographs, as well as in this contemporary footage. Volcanoes may emit disquieting rumbles for years without making trouble. They can also remain silent for centuries, only to explode with a fury that devastates land for miles around. The Arenal volcano, not far from Costa Rica's northern border, is a prime example of the latter. Until 1968, it was so quiet, the only way to tell it was a volcano was by climbing its cloud-covered peak and finding the crater at the top. Then an earthquake came. 24 hours later, Arenal exploded. By the time it was over, 78 people had died, some living as far as 10 miles from the volcano's base. No matter how big the damage or the threat, life goes on. Many Central Valley towns grow around picturesque ruins, such as the remains of the church in Ujarras, the first church ever built in Costa Rica. The town's inhabitants have learned to live with the potential danger of the towering peak. Or perhaps their serenity comes from the Hispanic fatalism they have inherited. Que será, será. What will be, will be. Earthquakes and eruptions have luckily spared the Lancaster Gardens, an oasis of pungent vegetation near Cartago. The gardens are lovingly maintained by the University of Costa Rica. Their sprawling grounds contain over 800 species of orchids, as well as numerous bromeliads and arum plants, and over 150 species of birds. The garden's administrator tells of its origins.
El Jardín Lancaster lleva el nombre de Don Carlos Lancaster debido a un inglés que vino a Costa Rica.
The botanical gardens were named after Charles Lancaster, an Englishman who came to this country at the turn of the century to cultivate coffee. He also found great beauty in orchids and decided to plant them in a garden where they could be easily admired by all.
Lo suficientemente admirado por las personas.
San Jose might be like almost any large city, full of cosmopolitan hustle and bustle. But in provincial towns, life slows down. Nearly 400 years old, the town of Heredia lives to a rhythm from another time. The main street may be fairly busy, with signs hinting at modernity, but just a few steps away, a different mood rules. Here, the local barber has as much prestige as the president of a social club. This is the place to go to for the news that matters, or to pass the time playing cards or checkers, both games originally made popular by the Spanish soldiers in colonial service. When the rainy season comes, as it does every year, from May through November, life slows down even further. No wonder the locals call the season winter. For them, summer is the dry period between December and April. Every day, regular as clockwork, the rain comes. Evenings may seem long, unless something extraordinary happens. such as a visit by a traveling circus. Both the young and old crowd into the circus tent, eager for some exotic entertainment. Acrobats, jugglers, clowns, men riding wild beasts. And men riding machines. This particular display of riding skill is banned in most countries. Its name, literally the ball of death, turned out to be only too appropriate. Although Costa Rica has its share and more of madcap drivers, most of them seem to live in the capital. Down in the country, off the main highway and on Indian roads called calzadas, the favorite means of transport is the same as when Columbus arrived, the ox cart. The ox cart is an inseparable part of Costa Rican folklore and is certain to survive well into the future. After all, what other all-terrain vehicle can claim to require almost no maintenance and to be powered by an engine that supplies itself with fuel? At Joaquin Chaverri's store and factory, ox carts are made into individual works of art, with every square inch of wood visible covered with a hand-painted, intricate design.
Esta es una de las carretas típicas de Costa Rica que usamos en las fincas. Esta carreta es más o menos lo que estábamos
This is one of the
viendo
typical ox
anteriormente.
carts that we use on the farms in
colorido
Costa
que tiene,
Rica.
como pueden ver, es lo más
The coloring of the
típico
cart is a very
realmente.
typical design in our country.
Es la carreta que se
The
usa en
peasants
las
have always liked
fincas
these lively colors.
en todo el país.
Originally, the designs were
Y el
painted in
campesino
one color.
siempre le ha gustado
Later,
estos colores
multicolors
así,
were introduced to
que
better
sean
resemble
muy
our
llamativos,
flowers.
con mucho colorido.
Today, these
Quizá
drawings
en
are
un
a Costa
principio
Rican
eran
work
de
of
un
art.
solo color y se usaban flores, pero
The carts
luego,
are made from the highest
entonces, se
quality
vino
wood,
usando
such
este
as
tipo de
Pacific
colorido
cedar
para
and other
reemplazar
tropical
las flores
hardwoods.
naturales. La
The wheel
rueda
alone is
es
constructed of 16
construida
pieces
con
of
16
caoba,
piezas
a
de
very dense
caoba
wood.
del Pacífico también.
There is a steel
Tiene
plate
hierro
in the
este
center of the
centro,
wheel to protect
que
it from
llamamos la
mud,
bocina, y el aro
rain,
también,
bad
este
roads,
anillo es de
and
hierro
other hazards
para
it may encounter in
protegerla,
daily
para
use on the
proteger la
farmlands.
madera de la intemperie, de los caminos malos o del fango o de toda la intemperie que puede tener la carreta al trabajar en las fincas.
The combination of Spanish and Indian elements is omnipresent in Costa Rican culture, whether on painted ox carts or in dance, a true cross-section of Costa Rican folklore. Since the late 19th century, there is a third force in Costa Rican folklore. It is the culture of the Caribbean, introduced into the country by its growing black community, whose vast majority lives on the Atlantic coast. Here, even the language is different. Everyone speaks English, or rather, its Jamaican variety. Good morning is whoppin', which means, what happened since we last saw each other? Goodbye is simply, okay, or all right. The origin of Costa Rica's black population is tied very closely to the railway that links its coastal community to San Jose. Just as the great railways spanning North America were mostly built by Chinese workers, the Costa Rican Railway was built by Jamaicans. And like its northern Trans-American counterparts, the San Jose Limon line has had a profound influence on this nation's life. The reason for its construction was the same as the force behind the building of the National Theater: coffee. By the middle of the 18th century, barely 50 years after Charles Lancaster planted the first seeds, coffee was Costa Rica's most important export. Today, coffee plantations cover much of the Central Valley's slopes, and coffee remains a lucrative export, as does another cash crop: bananas. Costa Rican bananas are known all over the world, perhaps even better than coffee. Some of these fruit, still green and encased in protective covering, could very easily end up as a snack for a Swedish schoolboy. Today, Limon, the site of Columbus's landing, is inhabited almost exclusively by the descendants of the railway workers, people both hospitable and proud of their nationhood. "200 miles northwest, near the Pacific coast, it is yet again a different world. The Guanacaste province occupies the northwestern corner of the country. Most of it is savanna, a bushy, grassy plain well suited for grazing. This is the land of cattle, and where there are cows, there will be cowboys. What does a Costa Rican cowboy do after a day spent watching the herd, sitting in the saddle under a scorching sun? The answer: same as cowboys anywhere else. Plenty of beef and beer. To this cowboy, that's what the good life is about. While most of Costa Rica's border is covered by mountains and forest, in the Guanacaste area it runs over level, grassy ground, making it the natural point of entry for an invader. It is on these plains that Costa Rica fought its only war, against a foreign invasion led by an American adventurer named William Walker. In 1855, Walker landed in Nicaragua, and with the help of six-shooters and repeater rifles, declared himself president. His next step was to march into Costa Rica, crossing the border in Guanacaste. Costa Ricans reacted with surprising speed. At first totally unprepared for war, within a week, they raised an army of 9,000 men. The soldiers had only a few outdated flint rifles. Most were armed with the same farm tools they worked with every day: pitchforks and machetes. After a fortnight's forced march, the Costa Ricans confronted Walker and his filibusters at the Hacienda Santa Rosa, a farm where Walker's men were resting prior to marching on San Jose. The invaders had barricaded themselves in a large stone and wood building called La Casona, today the site of a museum. After a short but intense battle, the invaders fled. The Costa Ricans, emboldened by this quick victory, pursued Walker's men into Nicaragua. There, the final showdown took place, with another Costa Rican victory. Today, Costa Rica is waging a different kind of war, a war to protect its endangered natural environment. Although industrial pollution is still negligible, cattle breeding and logging are a very real threat to the country's delicate ecological balance. The herds have spread from the plains onto the slopes of neighboring mountains. Thousands of acres of forest have been destroyed to make space for pasture land. In a country that has only 1/1000th of the world's landmass, but as much as 5% of its biological diversity, every acre counts. the Costa Rican fight for preservation of the natural environment has resulted in the creation of numerous parks and reserves, such as the Monte Verde National Park. Its grounds contain many unique species of plants, insects, and animals that have not been found anywhere else in the world, as the director of the park explains.
The reserve was created over 18 years ago with 325 hectares. Today we have over 10,500 hectares under conservation. The Cloud Forest Preserve, which is located approximately at 1,500 meters, protects watersheds for the lower Atlantic and Pacific sides. Thus we're safeguarding the future waters of future generations. We have thousands of species of insects, especially the nocturnal moths. Birds, our bird list is over 400 birds in the area. And if we go into the bigger animals, we have howler monkeys, white-faced monkeys, tapir, but the jaguars require big tracts of land. We think we're losing them and the habitat isn't big enough.
At present, over a quarter of Costa Rican land is protected under the National Parks and Reserves program. Some are broadly meant to preserve the fast disappearing rainforest. Others, like the Manuel Antonio National Park located by the sea, are intended to protect specific species of animals and other natural wonders. The stretch of Pacific coast covered by the Manuel Antonio Park is a favored breeding ground for turtles. The Manuel Antonio Park also protects a geological wonder, a phenomenon known as tambalo, a deposit of sand that has slowly built into a neck of land connecting an island to the mainland shore. This tambalo, already overgrown with lush vegetation, has taken 100,000 years to form. Its slender, sandy neck is regarded as one of the most perfect tambalos in the world. Combined, Costa Rica's Atlantic and Pacific coastlines are much longer than its land borders. So, it is not surprising that the sea plays a crucial role in this nation's life. After all, it was from the sea that bearded men came on huge ships with wings, changing forever the land's history. Today, as in pre-Columbian times, a sizable part of Costa Rica's population makes its living from what the sea has to offer. Seafood is a staple for coastal people. Delicacies such as oysters are part of common fare. The way oysters are gathered has a twist to it. Instead of being plucked off the stone it clings to, the shell is opened and the oyster taken. The reason for that is simple. It will be eaten within a few hours, and carrying all those shells is unnecessary. Over half the coastal population make their living through fishing, one way or the other. There is enough fish for everyone. Costa Rican waters are abundant in tuna, mackerel, snapper, grouper, marlin, sailfish, tarpon, and snook. The sea feeds many more people than the villagers living on the coast. Its wealth has also made possible the growth of a modern fishing and shipbuilding industry that is rapidly increasing in importance. The Pacific ports of Punta Arenas and Puerto Calderas are full of fishing boats, large and small, wooden outboard-powered craft, modern trawler factories where the fish are scaled, gutted, and frozen. Fishing boats being newly built, and boats being repaired. This fresh catch, just brought in by a local crew, is processed the moment it arrives on shore. Then, packed in ice, it will be taken inland and possibly end up in one of San Jose's restaurants. Costa Rican coasts are so rich in fish that sports fishermen from many countries take advantage of the abundance of game fish, the species that offer true sporting excitement.
The fishing here is fantastic, to say the least. The numbers of sailfish caught here are caught here like nowhere else in the world. I've been fishing commercially and sports fishing all my life. I come from a fishing family. My father was a fisherman, my grandfather was a fisherman. I know nothing else, and I would rather be no place else in the world for bill fishing. In Costa Rica, you're going to find some of the best captains in the world. There's many things a captain looks for when he's out here fishing. This week it's been the birds. If you find the birds, you find the bait, you find the fish. Some weeks it's the porpoises. The one thing about fishing Costa Rica, on our worst days, we catch fish.
The Pacific coast is lined with miles of beautiful beaches, with many stretches offering a peace seldom available in other, more well-known holiday spots. Here, one can swim in peace. Or sit in the shade of a palm tree, watched by no one but a wary iguana or two. Peace, in fact, is a theme of this Central American country. Straddling Costa Rica's border with Panama is a peace park, which serves a double purpose. In addition to protecting countless species of plants and animals, as many as 40% of which aren't to be found anywhere else, it has also resolved an old border dispute between the two countries. Here, life goes on as it has gone on for centuries, both for wildlife and humans. For those who know its secrets, the tropical forest is a hospitable habitat, not an enemy. To survive, however, requires special knowledge. For instance, how to build a fire following a tropical downpour. This is what it takes: a few twigs for tinder, a piece of quick burning bark that catches fire even when moist, and then, incongruously, an old plastic bag. The plastic melts and catches fire. Its high temperature dries out the tinder and sets it aflame. Life in the rainforest is a closed cycle. There is no waste. At a mountain trapiche, or sugar works, sugar is still made the way it's been for the past 400 years. First, the cut cane is fed into a press that's driven by oxen. Then, the juice is boiled until it thickens into syrup. The fire is fed by the same cane stalks that yielded the juice. The syrup is poured into special forms. There, it cools and solidifies. To see what attracted the Spanish settlers, all one has to do is look at the land from a hilltop on a clear morning and listen to the song of 1,000 birds greeting the new day. For this truly is the land of pure life, pura vida, a country whose soil might not have yielded gold nuggets, but whose people have an ability that eludes many others. The ability to enjoy life's simple pleasures. A dance on the farm on a quiet country afternoon. The touch of cool water on a sweltering day. A child learning to walk. A flower in bloom. This is Costa Rica, pure life.
International Video Network brings you the greatest adventures in video entertainment. Award-winning documentaries from Reader's Digest, exploring the masterworks of man and nature. Travel planning videos from Fodors, revealing looks at the people, places, and cultures of the world. Rand McNally Video Expeditions, taking you to some of the most remote and dangerous places on Earth. Rand McNally Video Travelers, whirlwind tours you can enjoy from the comfort of your living room. Super Cities, celebrating the best-loved cities of the world. And Video Visits, whisking you away to exotic, romantic, and popular destinations. International Video Network, great adventures in video. See your local video retailer or call